Hi! For today's video, we are going to be talking about how to make your style more rock and roll. If you're into the Rockstar aesthetic, if you like musicians, concerts, sparkly stage wear, that sort of thing, then this video is totally for you. I've put together a bunch of mood boards and tips full of tons of pictures and references and inspo, and I do have my Pinterest linked in the description if you are interested in saving some of the inspo for yourself. But all in all, I have some suggestions, styling tips for how to make your style more glamorous, flashy, bold, of course, rock and roll. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first way to make your style more rock and roll is to destroy and distress. Don't be afraid to destroy and mess up your clothes. Take scissors to them, hack things off, shred up the fabric, cut holes into things, rip up your tights, distress, grunge up your clothes. Nothing to me comes across as less authentic in rock spaces than clothes that are, shiny and perfect and new. I think pieces that look lived in, that you've had it for a while, that it's just gotten roughed up through life and wear and tear, or that you destroyed yourself, those pieces immediately have such a youthful, creative feel to them. It feels authentic, and overall, I think authenticity matters when dressing in this aesthetic. Making things too pretty and polished will just kind of cheapen the result. So having like a really rugged band tee, a shredded pair of tights or fishnets, or like a grungy sweater that's got holes all over it, adding anything distressed to your look is immediately going to give it that rock and roll feel. And you can see this across subgenres in music and different kinds of spaces, from punk to grunge. So holes, rips, tears, all of that is good actually when it comes to this style. All in all, I do think it is a blend of mixing old with new, but those pieces that you might consider too ratty or worn to wear are actually perfect here and very useful in creating that, lived in authentic rock star look. I guess maybe because musicians are on the road a lot, so their stuff does kind of get roughed up. You're working from a limited inventory when it comes to the clothing that you're wearing on stage. So I can see how it is influenced in the style in that way, but also it's just a way, to kind of stick it to expectations in society of always looking perfectly polished. So, cutting holes in your clothes on purpose definitely sends a message. And this look is really the antithesis to things, that we've been seeing trending lately, like the clean girl aesthetic. So lean into that disheveled, distressed look. The next way to make your style more rock and roll is to add pins, patches, and buttons. There's a lot of overlap in this video compared to the last one I just put out, so I will link that below if you're looking for, extra inspo and pics and stuff. But more specifically, I think with this aesthetic, I would say political buttons, things with funny sayings, prints like skulls and stars, and even band patches and buttons and pins, merchandise, recognizable logos. I am going to get into that a little bit more next, but I wanted to bring it up because it does apply to this. Yet when it comes to the buttons and pins and patches that you're choosing, I would lean political, lean musical oriented, and of course vintage. Vintage is always good. This style, is pretty much leaning on entirely vintage, or at least, thrifted secondhand finds. So cool things that you find at the thrift store and antique store are perfect, but the more buttons and pins and patches, the better. You can layer on all the pins and buttons and patches and create, entire garments out of them, accessories out of them. I think layering up on it as much as you possibly can is very cool and fun. And like I said, leaning into your personality, your beliefs, incorporating strong messaging is cool. But if your budget is tight, safety pins is a really, really cheap, easy way to go. You can add safety pins to anything. You can make jewelry out of safety pins, accessories. So even if you don't have, the time and resources to go and source these like one-of-a-kind finds, there's still a ton of DIY options available. And you can find like button kits and things like that at craft stores online, I'm sure. And patches are super easy to make yourself. You can just take an old t-shirt, cut it up, paint on it, draw on it. And as I previously mentioned, my next tip is to incorporate slogans, band tees, and graphic tees. It doesn't just have to be t-shirts, it can extend, to other pieces of clothing as well. But you do see a lot of graphic t-shirts in rock and roll and music spaces. Again, it is very rock and roll to wear your heart on your sleeve, or your, political and moral beliefs on your t-shirt rather. But it doesn't just have to be belief oriented. It can just be a silly, funny, sassy saying. Even kind of corporate-y logo types of t-shirts can come off quite rock and roll when styled properly. I think it's because it feels a little bit subversive, like you're not supposed to style it that way. This is also something that you can DIY. Over the summer, I did a little craft project with my friend and we made little tank tops, like just plain iron-on letters. And it turned out really cute. It was super easy. It didn't take a lot of time at all. But that's an easy DIY. Of course, band t-shirts, honoring the music that you listen to, of course. The key in styling, is kind of pairing it with unexpected things, really cool casual pieces, and kind of pairing t-shirts where you would least expect them. My next tip to make your style more rock and roll is to dress in bold colors and prints. Stars, stripes, polka dots, leopard prints, bright red, bright blue. These are things you see a lot of in the space. And I like extending the boldness to texture as well. You know, the overall visual impact of the piece matters. So a plain leopard print top might do the trick, but a fuzzy leopard jacket will just take it up a notch. Throwing colors and prints together that you don't think should go together, and even finding ways to mix the two. I've been into red leopard print lately. Styles like that I think are really fun. Anything that's loud and silly and playful, just high visual impact pieces are going to be eye-catching, obviously. And when it comes to this aesthetic, that is what you're trying to accomplish. You know, you want to be bold and demanding and attention grabbing. You want to stand out if you're on a stage or in a crowd. So incorporating lots of obnoxious pieces into your closet and styling them all together at the same time is, you know, an easy way to achieve that. But, you know, as with all these tips, you can really play around and personalize it. And all around, you know, it's just about having fun and being a bit chaotic, you know, with your look. My next tip is to add shiny, metallic, and reflective textures. I think the reason glitter and shiny things and sequins, that sort of stuff, is so often incorporated into stage wear is because the way the light reflects off of it. It always looks incredibly beautiful when someone is wearing something totally sequined, the way it glimmers and reflects. So anything shiny that catches the light is good. You can extend this to jewelry, your nails, all kinds of things. Silver metallic shoes are trending right now. You would probably be able to find some pieces like that, but sort of embodying a disco ball is the goal. You want to shine and sparkle and glitter in this aesthetic. A piece I've been on the hunt for forever is like a sequin mini skirt. I think they're so fun. And as I mentioned with t-shirts, styling them in kind of unexpected ways, I love seeing t-shirts paired with little sparkly skirts. Rock and roll is sort of an interesting mix of used vintage practical pieces and costumey out there ridiculous, completely impractical pieces. And overall the aesthetic, you know, comes together when you find that sweet spot of incorporating and balancing them both. But I do think while you want a lot of your clothes to be wearable, having some standout, sparkly, show-stopping items in your closet can really help elevate your look and give it that glamorous rock star feeling. My next tip to make your style more rock and roll is to add mesh, lace, or fishnets. This can range from tights to dresses to lingerie. Even lingerie printed on clothing I think is very fun in rock and roll. That's also like a piece I've been hoping to find. Something very fun about them to me. But incorporating literal lingerie is a good way to go. Or wear a slip dress out with some fishnets. Mesh too, and anything that's see-through and textured. There is definitely a heavy aspect of layering in this aesthetic. So having those sheer pieces helps you to layer a little bit easier. It just adds a little bit more detail to the look. I've been obsessed with mesh the past year. I've thrifted a lot of it. I've been wearing a lot of it. And lace too is very cool. Black is an obvious way to go, I think, but white lace can actually be very rock and roll. I think Courtney loved that kind of era. To me, it's very punky and cool when you take really unexpected pieces and clash them with things that seemingly shouldn't go with it. But it's fun because you can kind of play around, add a bit of sweetness and romance to the look, or you can edge it up a bit. But all in all, there's a lot of ways that you can include lace and mesh and fishnets in your look. Just a regular old pair of fishnets is a great place to start. My next tip is to incorporate menswear / corporate wear, which would include button-ups, blouses, ties, dress pants, loafers, slacks, those kinds of things. It might feel a little bit counterintuitive because these naturally present as more polished, professional sorts of pieces. But like I was saying, sort of with corporate logos, wearing those sorts of things in that setting, in a music concert space, feels unexpected. It feels like a statement against work culture. And so it can actually be very fun and quite playful to include those sorts of things in your outfits. The 70s is a great era to pull inspo from for this. Think of like David Bowie, Annie Lennox, Debbie Harry, even Hayley Williams from Paramore does this often. I mean, everyone I listed is just a great style reference for this in general. But to me, there's something so classically rock and roll about going on stage and performing in a suit. It's cool, it's timeless, it feels very effortless. But to me, there's something ultra cool about a suit, especially when it's approached in like a gender non-conforming sort of way. And I personally style things like this a lot. I love button-ups and blazers and ties, quite a few pairs of trousers and loafers too, but paired with fun makeup and hair and unexpected accessories and those sorts of things, the corporate menswear look suddenly becomes very elevated and very fun, very glamorous, and very rock and roll. My next next tip is to play around and experiment with out there hair and makeup. So all around, just have fun. It doesn't really matter the specifics of what you do, and that's kind of the point. It should feel personal, it should feel expressive, it should be dependent on your mood and what you want to try. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can approach beauty in the Rockstar aesthetic. I do love like a bold, glamorous look, but something grungy and a bit minimal is cool too. Like a dark eye or just a dark lip with no other makeup beside it. Again, going back to different musical spaces, different eras and decades. For me, I love a lot of retro looks, so the 60s and 70s are always an influence. I love new wave too, but I'm also a big fan of the 90s. I grew up in the 2000s, so that influences my style as well. But all around, play with your hair texture, your hair color, your hair cuts. Like any other tip on this list, it really boils down to personal preference and experimentation. And I think the most rock and roll thing you can do is just be yourself. And with that said, we have my last tip, and that is to embrace imperfection. I've already touched on it several times throughout this video, but this particular look definitely encourages play, experimentation. You don't want to look too put together and polished. When you layer all the elements together, it sort of imperfectly falls into a perfect place, if that makes sense. So don't overthink it. Despite what social media tells you, there's no specific pieces of clothing you need to own or any way that you should look. And trust me, I know it's really hard not to feel that way. But you know, in the spirit of this video and in the spirit of rock and roll, comparison and limits is the worst thing you can do. It's all about just trying things and not being too afraid to look bad, look wrong. It really doesn't matter if you're wearing cool or trendy brands. The more personal, the more imperfect, the more rock and roll I think someone's style feels. As I stated in the beginning, authenticity. What feels authentic to you? What feels good for you? Experimenting, expressing yourself is supposed to be fun. So don't worry about being perfect. Embrace the imperfection and have fun. So that concludes this video. If you have any tips and suggestions for how to make your style more rock and roll, please leave them in the comments. And also maybe some of your personal musical inspirations, who inspires you in this way. So I appreciate it if you watched this entire video. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!